In November 1979, Iranian student militants stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took dozens of Americans hostage. The crisis would last 444 days and become one of the most dramatic confrontations of the Cold War era. But just 2 weeks after the embassy takeover, something unexpected happened. Iran announced that certain hostages would be released immediately. The group included women and Black Americans. The decision shocked observers around the world and raised an uncomfortable question. Why would a revolutionary government holding Americans hostage decide to free Black Americans while continuing to hold everyone else? Iran's leaders claimed that Black Americans were themselves victims of oppression inside the United States and should not be punished for American foreign policy. More than 4 decades later, the decision remains one of the most unusual and controversial episodes of the hostage crisis. This is the story of why Iran released Black American hostages. In 1979, Iran underwent a revolution that overthrew the government of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The Shah had long been supported by the United States. Many Iranians viewed him as authoritarian and accused Washington of interfering in Iranian affairs. The revolution brought Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini to power. The new Islamic Republic was deeply suspicious of the United States. Many revolutionaries believed America had helped sustain the Shah's rule for decades. When the former Shah was allowed into the United States for medical treatment in October 1979, anger in Iran intensified. Just days later, students seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. On November 4, 1979, Iranian students stormed the American embassy. Dozens of Americans were taken hostage. The captors demanded the return of the Shah to Iran. The crisis quickly became international news. Night after night, television broadcasts showed images of blindfolded Americans and angry crowds. For the United States, the hostage crisis became a national trauma. For Iran's revolutionary government, it became a symbol of resistance against American influence. Yet behind the scenes, Iranian leaders were already making distinctions between different categories of hostages. Less than 2 weeks after the embassy takeover, Ayatollah Khomeini ordered the release of women and Black American hostages who were not suspected of espionage. Iranian state media argued that these individuals belonged to groups that had themselves experienced discrimination and oppression. According to contemporary reports, Khomeini stated that Black Americans and women should not be treated the same as those viewed as responsible for U.S. government policies. Ultimately, 13 hostages were released early. 10 were Black Americans and 3 were women. The remaining hostages would continue to be held for more than a year. The announcement generated confusion throughout the United States. Many Americans had never seen a foreign government publicly discuss American racial issues in such a dramatic way. Historians generally identify several possible motivations. Ideological reasons. Iran's revolutionary leadership frequently described itself as a defender of oppressed peoples worldwide. The new government sought to portray its struggle as one against imperialism rather than against ordinary Americans. Within that framework, Black Americans were often presented by Iranian leaders as victims of racial injustice inside the United States. Propaganda value. The decision also had strategic value. By highlighting racial tensions in America, Iran could challenge the United States' image abroad. The release allowed Iranian leaders to claim moral authority while simultaneously criticizing Washington. International messaging. Iran wanted the world to view the hostage crisis as a political struggle against American power, not a conflict with all Americans. Releasing specific hostages helped reinforce that narrative. For the hostages who were released, the experience was complicated. Some recalled that they were informed suddenly that they would be leaving. Former hostage James Hughes later described being escorted out under guard before being flown out of Iran. Many of those released had mixed feelings. They were relieved to regain their freedom. Yet they knew their colleagues remained captive. The early release did not necessarily mean they agreed with Iran's explanation. They had been hostages regardless of the political rationale offered by their captors. Back in the United States, reactions varied. Some people viewed Iran's decision as a cynical propaganda effort. Others saw it as evidence that America's racial problems were visible around the world. The episode sparked debate about race, foreign policy, and international perceptions of the United States. Some of the released hostages later expressed frustration that public attention focused primarily on those who remained captive for the full 444 days. Because they had been released early, they were often omitted from later discussions about the crisis. The event left a lasting impact on many of those involved. The release did not occur in isolation. During the early years of the Islamic Republic, Iranian leaders sometimes sought symbolic connections with anti-colonial and civil rights movements. Scholars have documented efforts by revolutionary Iran to express solidarity with certain black political movements and figures, including admiration for Malcolm X in some official rhetoric. However, historians caution against viewing these actions as purely altruistic. Foreign policy decisions often involve a mixture of ideology, strategy, and public relations. The hostage releases were likely influenced by all three. While 13 hostages were freed early, the crisis itself continued. More than 50 Americans remained captive. The standoff lasted 444 days. It damaged U.S.-Iran relations for generations and remains one of the defining events in the history of both countries. The final hostages were not released until January 1981. By then, the political landscape of the Middle East had been permanently altered. The release of Black American hostages in 1979 remains one of the most unusual episodes of the Iran hostage crisis. Iranian leaders presented the decision as solidarity with oppressed minorities. Critics viewed it as a calculated propaganda move. Most historians today see elements of both. What is beyond dispute is that the event revealed how closely America's domestic struggles could intersect with international politics. A revolution in Tehran, a hostage crisis watched around the world, and a decision that forced millions of people to confront difficult questions about race, power, and perception. More than 40 years later, the story remains a fascinating chapter in the history of U.S.-Iran relations. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more deep dives into Cold War history, intelligence operations, international crises, and the events that shaped the modern world.